The temples of the Mayans, the tombs of the Egyptians, the lost city of Atlantis. What did these things have in common? They were all once great civilizations, and now all that's left are legends and rubble. It's a great task to decipher a civilization of old. Many times, contemporary politics muddy the historical record. It's why many advocate for systems that have done nothing but fail in the past. Humanity occupies their thoughts with, what if we could do it better this time? Perpetual improvement is what we have evolved to do. Yet every problem has multiple solutions. These solutions that may work in theory crash and burn in practice. Sometimes problems remain unable to be solved after generations. Whose fault could it be? We long to find reason for failures. Many times we blame one or two specific instances of failure to explain an entire minefield of snowballing mistakes. Solving one rarely solves them all, and many have adverse effects on one another. A Rube Goldberg machine of complications influencing each other. However, recent events have given us a rare and great opportunity to see a civilization be born, progress, and die within less than a month.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture.
It was known by few as the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, but many called it CHAZ. CHAZ was an experiment gone wrong, a city of opportunity made by pilgrims to show their oppressors that they were better. CHAZ claimed to be the forerunner of progress within the decrepit states of America. The civilization was born during the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020. They occupied the land of Seattle, Washington, claiming it to be a self-contained autonomous zone. CHAZ was a place known for its culture, its art, its people. The Chazians, as they were called, were a diverse people with a rich culture that was unknown for the time. Some today still live on reservations. You might have passed by one and didn't even notice.
The Chazians would huddle around the fire and talk of the beginnings of their experiment. The story told of George Floyd, known by all during that summer, and although his death was recent, the story told was older than the foundations of the city they stood on. Many lives cut short or ruined. Every time the story is told, the name changes. George Stinney, Emmett Till, and later, and perhaps most relevant to this story, Rodney King.
California, they're bringing it in style.
It was near the end of the first year and the final countdown to the new millennia. People were excited. Things finally seemed to be cooling down. The Soviet Union had collapsed alongside the fall of the Berlin Wall, causing East and West Germany to be reunited. With the angst of the 80s behind, the 90s looked forward to be a less stressful time. The future was looking brighter, but even as these events played out, a young man named Rodney King was struggling to make ends meet. During his youth, Rodney would spend most of his time at the bottom of a bottle. His desire to escape would culminate a quarter of a year later in one of the most important moments of US history. Rodney King was driving under the influence, a dangerous act in of itself, especially while on parole. While speeding on Interstate Route 210, police attempted to pull him over for his reckless driving. Fearing what would happen, being given a DUI while on parole, Rodney, in a fit of panic, sped off, causing a high-speed chase down the freeway. Eventually, he was pulled over, and after an alleged scuffle, was beaten with what was determined to be excessive force by 4 police officers. Further research seemed to indicate that things spiraled out of control when only one of the 4 officers, Lawrence Powell, refused to stop beating and ignored alleged orders to cease. It is also determinable that Lawrence was racially motivated, given records of his previous incidents and comments on him from other officers. This was all captured by George Holliday, who recorded the entire exchange from his apartment window without the knowledge of the people involved, and was key evidence in the case following, leading to a pivotal moment when the unrest began building up. Letitia Harlins, a 15-year-old black girl, was shot in the back of the head inside a Korean-owned convenience store after a dispute over a $2 bottle of orange juice by Soon Ja-doo, who was working behind the counter. This damaged the relations between Korean and African-American citizens in the LA area, and Soon Ja-doo was convicted of manslaughter, but did not receive any jail time, something that would fuel the fires of what was to come. All 4 officers involved with Rodney King were acquitted of assault charges, and only one was charged with excessive force. Things began spiraling out of control as unrest boiled in the streets of LA, coupled with Letitia Harlan's death being considered to have gone unpunished, starting what would be known as the LA riots. Race relations were crippled, Koreatown was under attack and police refused to help. Although many took advantage of the situation, it was not hard to see what had happened. A failure on the side of those in charge, leading to chaos and a loss of life on a large scale, with those sworn to protect avoiding their responsibilities. The events of the LA riots changed something in Rodney King. His appetite for rebellion and escape instead became a pit in his stomach, and the famous words rung out as the chaos cooled.
I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along?
Although this happened more than 300 years ago, the story repeats and nothing has changed. George Floyd was an African American suspected of having a counterfeit $20 bill and was asphyxiated to death through excessive force by police officer Derek Chauvin. This, being the straw that broke the camel's back once again, caused protests to erupt throughout the United States. Throughout the next weeks, protesters and officers clashed. With individuals taking advantage of both, it was inevitable that eventually a boiling point would be reached once again. And so began the birth of CHAZ.
From June 1st to June 8th, aggressive protests ran throughout the city of Seattle. Chaos ran rampant and the streets were clogged with people. It was a standoff for a while. Both sides fought viciously. The Seattle Police Department used tear gas and pepper spray to disperse the crowd, but the protesters had a secret weapon. All at once, the people united together and made their Instagram profiles black. This was too much for even the officers of the law. This event was known by few, me, as the Black Square Standoff. A full retreat was in order. Officers boarded up and vacated the East Precinct. For a while, no one knew who called the order to retreat. It was eventually learned that Assistant Chief Tom McCarthy made the call without the knowledge of any superior. The reason for this tactical reassessment was to de-escalate the clashing protesters. And so on that night, the people claimed Capitol Hill as their own. Capitol Hill was an already populated area in the downtown business district. This area has also been known for previous political movements, like the Civil Rights Movement of 1965. The fact that this protest was so bad the police gave up showed how aggressive things may have gotten, according to someone, I don't know. CHAZ's territory stretched from the 2 intersections at the corners of Cal Anderson Park leading up to E. Pike Street. This new civilization brought hope for a better future. They promised to keep the values of peace, love, and tolerance. But the first tremors began when the Chazians colonized the land from the native inhabitants. You see, the indigenous people already made this land home. They were a small group of what you may know as the United States citizens, who were already in between the protests at the time. These Native Americans were caught up in the crossfire of the Chazians, who claimed that they were against colonialism, thus dawning what is known as the First Hypocrisy. The Chazians began to barricade off roads, preventing police intervention. Since the Chazians started as a protest, they had demands. The main one was that the police force in the area had to have their funding cut in half. Also, the people of CHAZ did not want to be charged with any crimes. Sounds reasonable. The mayor of Seattle, Jenny Durkin, didn't even think twice. She said it had a block party kind of feel, sort of like a sit-in and summer festival.
So I know it will shock you that the president is perhaps not giving an accurate or truthful picture. We've got 4 blocks in Seattle that you just saw pictures of that is more like a block party atmosphere. It's not an armed takeover.
We can only assume whatever a block party and sit-in summer festival is a dystopic violent coliseum where gladiators fought to the death. And so the city-state of CHAZ was left alone to grow. As you might expect, starting a community was not an easy task. One of the main problems was the threat of the coronavirus, a great plague that fell on the world earlier that year. To prevent infection, the citizens wore ceremonial face masks to scare away the virus, but only when they weren't participating in their recreational substances. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It's time now to go over the most important aspects of this lost culture. The citizens of CHAZ were a fascinating group. Although they were a proud people, it was their arrogance that led them to new paths of self-destruction.
What is your message to frustrated residents that have complaints about loud music, about being uncomfortable with being home, walking in and out at night? What do you say to them?
If that discomforts them, I can't imagine how they feel about black people being murdered by police.
Cowardly? Yes. Intelligent? No. Ruthless? Of course. As mentioned before, the Chazians were a diverse group of people. The population consisted of several different races, mostly consisting of Caucasoids and African Americans. They believed that every race was equal, and no one would be segregated for their skin color, except some races were weaker than others. It's hard to explain the thought process of the Chazians, but at the time they were constantly preaching that the African American race was being hunted to extinction by officers of the law. In an attempt to protect the endangered group, the Chazians purposely brought back race segregation. All around CHAZ were black-only gardens and safe spaces. This was accepted by all, and nobody saw a problem with it. Interestingly, the white population would be active during the day, but at night they were nowhere to be found. Perhaps they were all sleeping. Some theorize this was to camouflage, as white people are harder to see with the sun reflecting off of their pale skin, leaving at night, for the moon reflects too little light to be tactically useful. The darker peoples enjoyed their times at night with minimal annoyance from the Caucasoids, watching late-night movies and patrolling the streets. Chazians were always quick to anger. Constant infighting was a norm in the city-state. But these ritual acts of aggression were a way to confront those who did not believe in their cause, or to shut down provocateurs from parading over their message. There was no room for conversation, and so many were wary of the Chazians. If they were not fighting, they were either taking drugs or standing around aimlessly. Chazians constantly preached about staying together in a community, but mostly focused on themselves for the most part. The people were as resourceful as you would expect. They used electricity, food, water, and public sanitation from outside sources, like the greater city of Seattle. This saved a lot of money for hard-working Chazians to indulge in spiritual substances and focus on the acquisition of more spiritual substances. They lived in simple tent structures which protected them from the elements, and the natural predators known ominously as the homeless. Chazian civilizations were perfectly adapted to thrive in the wide open streets of Seattle. The diets of these people consisted of vegetarian foods, but supplemented with ice cream and whatever crap they had lying around. The life expectancy of these people could have ranged from a minimum of 100 years to a maximum of unknown. Artifacts found at the excavation site show the artwork of these inspired people. To the untrained eye, this might be middling, but look closely and you'll see the big picture. Every square inch of wall or plywood was a canvas to spread the message. The constant repetitive nature of the art pieces signifies that everyone was on the same page or had a very low attention span. The most prominent symbol was the Black Fist. Black Lives Matter ran throughout the town, and it spread their message very well. The Black Fist was not only used to unify, but also to scare away enemies. There was even a giant wooden idol that was erected in the middle of CHAZ. They would pray to this fist, hoping that their colony would have a bountiful harvest that winter. American flags were defaced with graffiti and fire. Anything associated with the ancient empire was critiqued with intentionally low-effort generic phrases in an effort to disgrace their oppressors. Phrases like, "fuck Trump this," "fuck America that," generic stuff. The Interstellar Confederation of Homosexual People, also known as the fledgling LGBT, also had a field day. Rainbows brought color to an otherwise dark and gloomy CHAZ. It was very reminiscent of the primordial makeover documentary known as Queer Eye. Those who did not have the advanced cybernetics of the Queer Eye were instead forced to use street art known as graffiti. One of the more jaw-dropping works of art was the large mural of Black Lives Matter on the streets near the soccer field. Several artists participated in the task by decorating each letter with their own style. It took approximately 1 solar cycle to complete. Too bad that this work was in vain, because most of the streets in CHAZ were covered in human feces.
Man, someone put their OnlyFans account, man. Come on, my G.
The economic system of CHAZ was hard to comprehend, as many of them were a mixed bag of social left and anarcho-left ideologies. But for the most part, they were considered to be an anarchist commune. And to understand what an anarchist commune is, you must first understand the principles of anarchy. Anarchist movements have existed for as long as there is power to rebel against. It is within human nature to disdain authority, until you have authority, that is. Politically, however, anarchists are torn between two main factions, the basis of which is that humanity inherently is able to coexist without governing bodies to tell them what to do. The schism between anarchists comes in the debate around hierarchy. Some anarchists believe that unjust hierarchies must be abolished, while the other half believe all hierarchies to be unjust. Thus, all hierarchies must be abolished. The issue is that hierarchies tend to form without intent, and that many believe the proposed replacement for government anarchists suggest, also known as a community, simply act the way governments do already, and the inherent idea of a community breeds hierarchies into existence. Essentially, anarchists want to replace the government with another government, except it's not a government because they call it a community instead. They want a moneyless, classless society in which the means of production are owned by everyone, except the community decides who's in charge of running said means of production, and the community has representatives which are voted for, and that those representatives have the power to manage said means of production. This translates to CHAZ as one person growing turnips in a soccer field providing sustenance for the commune, except nobody ate it because it was grown in the middle of a city and tasted like gasoline. Indeed, you can solve a food shortage by making everyone hate what they eat. All in all, CHAZ had no real economy, because so many differing factions of social anarchist movements converged there. The only real money being used were the drugs brought in by roving gangs of opportunistic criminals. Meaning, CHAZ functioned better as an anarcho-capitalist trading hub than a moneyless, classless society.
CHAZ was not known for having a leader per se. At first, it was believed that there was no real authority figure. It was one of the ideas that separated CHAZ from other societies. The Chazians believed in a fully autonomous anarchist commune, but there were some to be considered a ruler over this land. The first of them was a lesbian anarchist, Laura Kook, who was accused of being a serial abuser, which she admitted to, stating, here we go, "I'm not going to get better." Her main tenets of leadership being abolishing whiteness, capitalism, and civilization. So as we can see, the foundations of hypocrisy were already laid by an Angloid leader who rejects the whole principle of civilization entirely. A white woman who demands an ethnic and cultural cleansing of whatever can be considered to be whiteness. But luckily, or perhaps unluckily, depending on your personal beliefs, Laura was quickly and unceremoniously overthrown by the influential Raz Simone. Raz began his life as a humble bard of sorts, living in the Seattle area. His music was the basis of his philosophy.
I was with some prostitutes in the house, not on the roof.
Seeing how there was no real enforcement, Raz was labeled the warlord of CHAZ. Not a good title for a new civilization. He didn't even like being called that, but he definitely loved the attention. I bet he must have been a really nice guy, right? Look at him handing out guns to kids.
Citizen rule. People making a better tomorrow.
He knew that the Chazians were basically a bunch of lazy cowards, so he showed how forceful he could be by beating them up for spray painting. He would send his lackeys around the area to patrol and even get handouts to fund security. CHAZ is also known for their heroes. You might even say they were super That's right, the Guardians of the Ghetto, aka Task Force Echo. They protected the innocent and looked badass while doing it. Some notable warriors included Red Ranger and Justin Service. My god.
This is Red Ranger on patrol with Spirit Fox and Justin Service with the Emerald City Heroes organization. Had a pretty busy night. We were able to return some stolen property, also do some violence de-escalation, and keep everybody safe and prevent violence.
Genetically modified at birth, these humans peaked in the evolutionary process. Created before the rise of CHAZ, they wandered the earth looking for a purpose. So when CHAZ came to power, it was a no-brainer. By the way, but before we continue, I'd just like to mention that these are all white guys. I just wanted to put that out there. There are several witness accounts recorded on papyrus scrolls telling the tales of these brave warriors shielding the weak from fireworks. Yet, despite all these heroes, they could not save CHAZ in the end.
The first mark of the fall of CHAZ began when they renamed themselves to CHOP, changing themselves from the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone to the Capitol Hill Occupational Protest, a sad attempt at declawing their image. From an outside perspective, it is clear that the people in charge desired to make themselves seem harmless, thus being an occupational protest, something temporary, and not an autonomous zone as they had planned. It also goes to show how reliant on outside sources they were, and the embarrassment they felt on having to rely on American influence for medical assistance. Speaking of which, the rampant drug distribution also had long-term ramifications. While Raz Simone's connection to the drug trade is unverified, it is no coincidence that the drug trade flourished beneath his influence. CHAZ was a place without police intervention, and an easy place for drugs to expand. Thus, many of the anarchist movements now had to play second fiddle and cooperate with hardened drug dealers. These people saw market demand for their product in an unregulated space and went inside practically taking over. The Seattle area was already known for some of its issues with the drug trade, and this was exemplified when things escalated.
We have breaking news this morning out of Seattle's so-called Capitol Hill organized protest zone. Yet another shooting overnight.
There were 4 shootings in CHAZ over the course of 10 days. The 4th shooting, however, is the most important. Antonio Mays Jr. This one is very muddy, as many details are differing from report to report, but the consistencies all remain. It was covered up via evidence tampering, coupled with the slow response from medical dispatchers due to CHAZ's decentralized leadership and borders, making ambulances hesitate to enter an area where they were likely to be attacked.
You could be saving his life. Sir, please explain to me what's going on. He's dying. He needs your help. This is your job. Is this in your heart to do this? This is ridiculous. Are you guys kidding me? Are you guys kidding me right now?
As for what happened, the details are unclear. Antonio Mays Jr. and his friend, Robert West, were in a car. Details about the car are incredibly hard to parse through, but a vague collection of testimonies allow us to see a general idea of what went down. Antonio and Robert were in CHAZ to experience the culture and art of this budding civilization. Then, something happened. Whether it was one of the drug dealers or anarchist groups is unclear, but Antonio and Robert found themselves in a car fleeing CHAZ due to what might have been someone attacking them. CHAZ security, also known as the mixture of dealers and anarchists, shot at the speeding vehicle, assuming it to be a drive-by, and then passing that information along.
Rest in peace, my brother that came through.
Rest in peace.
He had to, but he got clapped, and we brought him to the hospital. But whatever happened, bro. But we out here to save lives and do shit for the people.
Who was driving it?
Some active shooters. Active shooters came through in a stolen vehicle. They spun around the field a few times, and then they tried to come through our barrier, through our main entrance, bro. And our people are having it. We already had the right tire out, and they fucking put on or drew down and took him out the car, and we gave him service.
The drive-by narrative was spread between CHAZ security, and the car was shot until it crashed into a barricade. From what we can hear in the footage, it sounds as if Antonio or Robert were still alive and was executed by CHAZ security.
Oh, you're not dead, huh?
Nobody knows who this individual was or has come forward with any information, but we can see the masked Angloid picking up bullet casings, saying, "You didn't see anything."
Unless you see any shells on the ground, pick those up, pocket them, take them home.
Hell yeah, no evidence.
I want to get the fuck out of here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, hey, I'm sorry I got to take off, but I don't trust the cops.
I don't trust, but you needed to be here.
Yeah, y'all don't know who I am.
I know. I don't care to know. All I know is thank you.
CHAZ officials blamed the hospitals for Antonio's death due to the hesitant response. However, Robert West was still alive even after the alleged execution. With 3 bullets taken to the head, he was shipped off to intensive care with some difficulty. Civilian medics claimed the ambulance U-turned upon meeting at a rendezvous point for transporting Robert. The death and injury sparked mounting pressure by those outside of CHAZ to establish order in the area. Eventually, the Native American law enforcement took action, and CHAZ was dispersed in the early weeks of July 2020. The city was torn down, everything was purged. Chazians had to reintegrate into their old oppressive societies, and what little artifacts could be collected were eventually thrown away or hidden in the dark spaces where secrets are kept. The mayor, Jenny Durkin, was voted out of office in 2021. Laura Kook still says nonsense online, but recently deleted her account and vanished from public space. As for the warlord Raz Simone, well, he was confronted by 7 women over the next 2 years alleging his repeated sexual abuse and trafficking, of which he was on trial for, but many cases have been dropped due to the statute of limitations. Raz Simone has barely reflected on his experience in CHAZ, for he is like a king without a kingdom. The police are still criticized for being mostly useless during the ordeal, as was the criticism of them during the LA riots of '92. The East Precinct of Seattle had its defacement cleansed, and an ironic end to our tale, as it was constructed under the leadership of Sam Smith, the first African-American city councilman in Seattle, who desired a faster response times for the inner-city black demographic.
History seems to repeat itself. Or perhaps the cycle never really truly finishes to begin with. It's strange how martyrdom works itself out in a way. Some make leaders of those who never asked for it, or could never consider it. We make reasons for actions that justify themselves only in the context of their time. The problems now have been regulated to be solved by the generations of the future. But every new generation finds itself mired with a half-finished Jenga tower of problems, unstable and chipped away at, waiting to fall. Or for the responsibility to be pushed on to the next player. Eventually, every possible move becomes the wrong one. And when every move is wrong, how do you move forward?